Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1999 documentary film American Pimp. Now, American Pimp is a documentary about pimping. It chronicles the history of pimping throughout the ages. It talks about pimping in different aspects of society, like pimping in entertainment. It talks about the future of pimping. It has interviews with all different types of pimps, as well as the prostitutes that they employ, and it's one of those very gritty and honestly, in a lot of ways, kind of seedy documentaries that talks about a side of life that normally doesn't get a spotlight put on it because it's considered to be something that's immoral or isn't worth the spotlight. And in all honesty, I thought it was rather interesting. I wouldn't say it's something that I would watch again anytime soon, but for a one time watch, it was definitely worth it. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the film, though, I would like to give a special shout out to Shine for requesting this review. And if there is another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon or my Cash App. The link to all three is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your requests as soon as I possibly can. Now, American Pimp is directed by the Hughes brothers, who are well known for films like Menace to Society and Dead Presidents. This was actually their first and their last documentary. And based on their work here, it's honestly a shame that this was their last documentary. This was a really well directed documentary. It had some great style and flair to it that matched the flashy nature of pimps and the overall energy of the pimps that were interviewed throughout the film, or the ones that were shown in old clips from 70s black exploitation movies. And I really felt the Hughes brothers' unique signature style was still very prevalent here in this documentary when it comes to their very gritty and grounded way of filmmaking. And the framing was interesting and intricate when it comes to the way that they framed their interview subjects. There's a nice variety of different locations and different settings where the Hughes brothers interviewed these pimps or the prostitutes. It wasn't one of those things where they only interviewed them in a single room with a white background or something. They interviewed them in their own homes, interviewed them in their cars, interviewed them outside in the park. Like, there is a lot of variety in terms of the different places where these pimps were being interviewed. And that definitely added a lot to the film when it comes to the direction. And I think they did a good job utilizing different sort of angles at points to further emphasize whatever mood or whatever feel they were trying to get with the interviews. Uh, there were moments where they really did a great job making you feel like a fly on the wall in a room with these pimps and their prostitutes, which created almost a reality television or a POV kind of vibe and feel to the film at points. And I think the B roll and the establishing shots are honestly, for the most part, quite excellent. So I think the Hughes brothers did a great job, and I don't really feel that their direction is a problem. I don't think they were ill suited for this particular project at all. I know that this is, I think, their least favorite film that they've done, and I don't think it's necessarily due to their effort or due to what they did. It's due to other factors. Uh, it's due to the fact that a friend of theirs, at least somebody that they thought was a friend, forgive me for stuttering there, they thought that this guy was a friend and he backstabbed them and stole their movie idea and made a low budget documentary about pimping and the pimp lifestyle and sold it to HBO. And that got some notoriety and fame and some good critical reviews. And it he was essentially upstaging the Hughes brothers' own film that they were working on prior to this guy who stepped in and stole the film idea from them. So I can understand why there's some sour grapes, to say the least, when it comes to the Hughes brothers and American Pimp. But I still think that they did a good job directing wise. Now, it doesn't really have a screenplay because it's a documentary, but I think it's structured well. I think it's got a very structurally sound foundation for the documentary. It is in a lot of ways kind of split up in a couple different uh, parts. So you have the first part of the documentary, which focuses on pimps working illegally uh, and has interviews with the illegal pimps who are currently working at the time of the shooting of the documentary. Charm from Hawaii, Filmore Slim from San Francisco, Payroll from Las Vegas. These pimps plus other people and historians, not really a lot of historians, a lot of the interviews are just pimps and they're prostitutes. And I actually think that's really the right idea because that's what makes this a novel documentary is that it's from their perspective. I don't really want to see the perspective of a pimp historian. I don't really care. So most of the time the interviews are with the pimps or their prostitutes and they talk about their philosophy on pimping, how they live their daily lives. They also discuss the history of prostitution, its social impact. It talks about different aspects of pimping throughout culture, and there's a lot of different clips from old 70s blaxploitation films that involve pimps like the Mac that are utilized throughout the film, and honestly, a pretty clever fashion to add even more personality to this film. And then you have the second half of the documentary that is more about the legal side of prostitution, the growing popularity of legal prostitution, like the Bunny Ranch in Nevada, which was owned by Dennis Hoff, who was interviewed here as well. And it also does have a lot of moments where, it's talking about the perks of pimping and the lifestyle. You have a part of the documentary that goes to the players ball, which I had no idea that was a real thing. I thought that that was just a Chappelle show sketch because I'm just a white boy from the suburbs and I don't know any better. But this film opened my eyes and showed me that no, the players ball was not really a joke. Like that was a real thing. Like it wasn't something that was made up for a sketch comedy show. And you have some interviews where pimps are talking about the money and the suits and the cars, but then you have the cold hard reality of it, where you have interviews with prostitutes that died from the lifestyle or pimps who have retired, who are now no longer pimps and work regular jobs, or pimps that are in jail. So I don't necessarily agree with some critics that talk about how it's just glorifying the pimp lifestyle. It's not really. It has moments like that, but it's to set up a facade, to set up something that makes you think that that's where this documentary is going, but then by the end, it's showing the harsh truth of it, that it's not all about the women and the cars and the money and the flashy suits and all that other stuff, all those other things, and a lot of that stuff can ring hollow, especially if you wind up in jail and you're not able to flash your suits or drive your cars or do any of this other stuff anymore. And it also talks about how pimping, traditional pimping, was being phased out by legal prostitution. So I think that there was some genuine social commentary that was discussed in this documentary, but a lot of it is more of a slice of life kind of thing. Following the pimps while they're working with their prostitutes in different parts of the United States, talking with the pimps, talking about their guidelines, talking about their opinions of different things that are associated with pimping, different myths different assumptions that people have. And I thought it was interesting that even pimps have lines that they draw in the sand. Even pimps have a certain semblance of integrity, where they're talking about how yeah, they call their women bitches, but it's not necessarily the same as when other people do it. There's another connotation that's associated with them calling their women bitches, or their different opinions on how to keep their women in line. Where one pimp will talk about how you got to smack a hoe, you got to do that, you can't let her walk all over you. But then there's other pimps who are like, you never do that. You find another way. And I was like, that is interesting. That is genuinely fascinating that there's different philosophies for pimping with different pimps. And it was also rather intriguing to see that some of the prostitutes were talking about uh their pimps in a way that was actually positive, but not didn't really seem like something that was like one of those instances where it's like she's just being forced to say this, or the abusive relationship is why she's saying this. It actually comes across as sincere, uh as if the pimps actually did help these women make money, get some sort of safety and security. And while they're doing these illegal acts and doing all this other stuff, and it's something that you might look at on the outside and be like, this is just awful, and there's nothing positive about it. Hearing their perspective and where they were in their lives, and how things were just completely upside down, to have that stability and to have money and to also have that protection isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. And it's another interesting thing to see these prostitutes talk about the legal prostitution, like at the Bunny Ranch, and the differences between that and working for pimps, and how with the legal prostitution at the Bunny Ranch and places like that, and the legal escort services, they have more sway, they have more say in things, they have more control over their own bodies. They can tell the guy who runs the ranch that, hey, I don't have a good vibe about this guy, get him out of here. So that was something that I felt really added a lot to this documentary, to have their perspective and their voice also be heard in this film about pimps. And it was also interesting to hear from the perspective of the vet, the veteran pimps, or the guy who in a lot of ways is considered to be like the godfather of pimpin', the guy who started it all, and to hear from his perspective and to hear how he started it, and also hear from some other guys who were initially kind of reluctant about pimping, but then they found a prostitute that was really willing to work with them, and then they wound up getting wrapped in it and really liked the lifestyle, really got into pimping, and then did it for like 20 years, and then they couldn't do it anymore, and then retired, and then now they're living in the suburbs somewhere with their families, holding down a regular job and reminiscing about the good old days, the days where when they were pimping. Like it was, and that's where a lot of the Rosebud interviews are featured and utilized throughout the documentary, is when you have like the whole guy who used to pimp but now he's no longer pimping, and I felt that that was definitely a really interesting dynamic to have the old pimps talk about their glory days, and then the current pimps talk about their operation. And it's one of those documentaries where I guess some people might look at it as being kind of threadbare or thin in terms of the topic, but I didn't really feel that way. I felt like it was still rather engaging, rather interesting, because I was fascinated and drawn in with the stories of these old pimps and the new pimps, and just the way that they're talking about pimping in a very down to earth and very real and raw fashion. And there's ton of interviews. There's interviews with Rosebud, Filmore Slim, Gorgeous Dre, Mel Taylor, Danny Brown, Ken Red, Payroll, Shanette Parker, Charm, Latrice, Jade, Sir Captain, Bradley, Payroll, Too Short, Mr. Ivy, Bishop, Don Magic Wand, RP, Dennis Hoff, C Note, and Caleb Devine. Now, the film also features cinematography by Albert Hughes, one of the Hughes brothers. It looks good for the kind of movie that this is. Uh, and it's edited by Doug Prey, and I think he did a really good job, a really genuinely great job editing this, cutting all the interviews together, giving them a certain attitude, a certain style that matched what the Hughes brothers were doing in terms of their direction. And I definitely want to give the editor a lot of credit for how he edited in all of the blaxploitation footage. It's like 87 minutes, and it really goes by at a fairly quick pace, because I think that the subject is actually interesting. And I think the Hughes brothers do a good job in terms of making the stories from these pimps and their daily lives rather interesting and genuinely entertaining to watch at points, despite their actions and what they're doing, which is considered to be illegal and rather immoral by a lot of people, and honestly justifiably so. But it was rather intriguing to see a documentary that was willing to discuss pimping and to discuss this particular topic in a way that wasn't necessarily sensationalized. It was more down to earth and real. So that's my thoughts on American Pimp. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.